Welcome to Mediocre Gaming, and today we're talking about The Division 2. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salutations. Today, the changes between Division and Division 2. Let's get to it. So with everything we know from E3, there are going to be some huge changes in Division 2 compared to Division 1. This is in no small part due to the changes in the dynamics and how things work. First of all, you have armor plates instead of medkits, and armor is an actual number like your health instead of being a number which affects damage mitigation. So in the Division, armor was damage mitigation, and the higher your armor, the more damage you can mitigate. So at one point you could get about 50% damage mitigation. So instead of doing 50,000 points of damage, the enemy would only do 25,000 points of damage. And then your health would be your main source of staying alive. So you had damage mitigation, and then you had your health, and that kind of filtered down to very little damage. So as a result, you had to have spongy, tanky enemies that needed to be hit in the head 700 times before they'd go down. It resulted in people running around in the dark zone, just blasting other people to bits. And I'm not saying it wasn't fun, but it wasn't what the developers had designed. It's not what they intended with their game. First and foremost, Division and Division 2 is supposed to be a cover-based shooter. People have not been using a whole lot of cover in the Division for quite some time. Occasionally on legendary missions and incursions, and that's about it. People have not used cover in the Dark Zone since Deadeye could one-shot people in the Dark Zone, and only for that one. Previously, and to this day, hardly anyone uses cover in the Dark Zone, if at all. So the developers looked at it and said, what can we do to make that change? So what they did was they changed armor from being damage mitigation to being another layer of health. And the armor does not regenerate unless you use an armor plate, which requires 2 to 3 seconds to switch out, which can be interrupted, or at the end of conflict. So, as in Division 1, when you would get out of conflict, then your health would regenerate. It would be the same thing in Division 2 with your armor. So you don't have to use an armor plate and basically waste it at the end of a conflict. It'll automatically regenerate. Now when you use an armor plate, you also regenerate your health. So if you're in low health, you're out of armor, use the armor plate, and you'll bring both of those back up to full, if you can pull it off without being interrupted. Now, as a result of having armor as an actual number, as like health, so it's actually adding to your health. Although, like we said, it does not regenerate like your health. So, because of that, they can make enemies not be bullet sponges because you're not a bullet sponge yourself. Now, in addition to the armor, you also have changes to weapons. So far as I have seen, the weapon perks and weapon mods are not all, additive and multiplicative. They are conditional, and they are a trade-off. So what do I mean by that? So weapon mods all have a plus and a minus. So if you put something on there, it's going to increase one stat but decrease another one. So it'll increase your headshot damage but decrease your reload time. It'll increase your stability but decrease your accuracy. It'll increase your crit chance, but it'll decrease your weapon damage. Or it'll increase your weapon damage but decrease your accuracy. Whatever the case may be. So all the mods have a trade-off where you increase one stat but decrease another one. And then the perks or talents on the guns are gated talents, where you have to put the enemy on fire, or they have to be disoriented, or you have to be close, or you have to empty your magazine, or there is something conditional where you have to do one action before it will benefit you. So you're not always going to have a bonus active on your gun where it's just automatic extra critical chance, or you don't always have extra weapon damage, or whatever the talent is. They're all gated in some way so that they are not always active. Now, as a result of that, the developers have devised a way to visualize when your talent is active for your gun. There's a little light or indicator on your gun or next to your gun that'll say when that perk is active and when you can take advantage of it. So as a result of armor being another health, and weapon mods and weapon talents being the way they are, in addition, armor talents are also the same way. They are gated. Things like you do increased melee damage, but your armor has to be under a certain number. So, I mean, something like that, technically, you may not think of it as being gated, but increased melee damage is going to come at the cost of being more vulnerable. So you have to be tactical in approaching an enemy in order to melee them. Okay, so what does all of this mean for the gameplay in Division 2? Alright, so we've already said enemies will not be bullet sponges because you're not a bullet sponge. So they're more vulnerable, you're more vulnerable. Now there will still be enemies that have armor. So they are going to be or feel like they're a little spongy, but you have to damage the armor, and it shows in their health bar as kind of a checkerboard, so that you know automatically that this guy has armor on him. Now all the named bosses and at least some of the elites are going to be armored, so you can already recognize why that is. It's meant to be, named enemies, bosses are meant to be a challenge. So having that armor is going to make it so that you have to be more tactical with it. And as with the demo, nobody was face tanking the boss until the very, very end. And they almost completely wiped as a result. So even with a shotgun, you're not going to just sit in someone's face and try to take them out. Not if they're a boss. One of the red guys, you could do it. Maybe one of the purple guys, but you're going to be taking some heat as well. So you're going to lose some of your armor, or all of your armor, and then you're going to be down to your health. And as I've said in a previous episode, health is approximately half the amount of your armor. So once you lose your armor, you're down to actually about a third of your overall health number. So if you include armor as part of your health, then you have 30,000 health, and then an extra 60,000 armor, so 90,000 total health. So by the time you get down to where your armor is shot and gone, you're down to 1/3 of your total, or approximately. There are pieces on your armor that increase your total armor, things that'll increase your health. So the numbers are going to be a little bit different depending on what you're going to spec into or what types of drops that you get. So you're going to be, even in PvP situations, you're going to be using cover. PvE, you're going to be using cover. PvP, you're going to be using cover. Now, as a result, in the PvE encounters, as you're using cover, there are going to be enemies that are going to try to flank you. I guarantee that will be written into their AI. So you'll have the bulk of the guys in front of you, and you'll have a small group going off to the left or the right or both, and trying to get you in a vulnerable state where you have to make a move and you have to get out of cover, and you're going to be taking a lot of damage when that happens. So to counter that, you're going to have to be aware of enemy movement and seeing where they're going. You will have a little advantage against some of the enemies because you'll have skills that they won't have. Now the true sons, as you saw in the demo, I kind of relate them to the rioters. They're kind of the bottom feeders on the food chain. As we find the more factions and the tougher factions, I think we'll find out how much tougher they can actually get. So in PvP encounters, skill builds will actually be a viable option. You'll have to approach all PvP encounters more tactically. You can't just run in there and hope for the best, because that is going to end in disaster. So skill builds with skill power and skill haste are going to be viable options, and it will depend some on the cooldown of the different skills that are available in Division 2. Additionally, you're going to have some DPS and maybe some little bit tankier builds, so that you can have complementing abilities between different members in your group. And that's another thing. You're not going to want to run around the DZ by yourself. Absolutely, a group of 4 will take on a group of 1 or 2 anytime, because they will be able to face tank you and take you out. Now, as a result of that, I think the developers kind of realized what was going on, and realized it from Division 1 that single players were at a disadvantage to groups of 4. So they included clans into Division 2. Now, how clans will exactly work, we don't know at this point. But it should make it easier to find a group of people that you can run around the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone, I think it's a safe assumption, will have the best, most sought after gear and weapons. So if you're at the end game and you want to get better weapons and better armor, the Dark Zone is the best shot at getting it. Now the raids, I'm sure, will have good rewards for completing them. They'll also be very challenging. The Dark Zone will be challenging, but in a different way. That's it. Make sure to ring that bell before you leave to get notified of all new content as soon as it comes out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.